I am back and we are talking about mixed voice again. Why? Because it's one of the most important things to learn how to do with your voice. But let's be real, there's not just one way to mix your voice. There's lots of different ways depending on the sound that you want to make and the genre that you want to sing in. So if you are curious about mixed voice or confused about mixed voice or just want to expand your horizons or your capabilities or your versatility as a singer, make sure you stay tuned. Welcome back to Singing Tips with LJD Studios, the space where we take difficult singing concepts and break them down so you can actually understand and implement them for better singing. I'm Laura, and today we are talking about mixed voice. But before we get into it, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you haven't already, download my free guide, The 3-Tiered Approach to Becoming a Better Singer, linked in the description. All right, so let's get into it. What are these different ways of mixing your voice for singing? Okay, so if we're going to talk about mixed voice, we got to talk about registration for a second. And if you're curious about the topic of registration or you've never heard of that word before and you want to know more, check out my video on registration. But maybe you've heard the terms chest voice and head voice before. Those are two registers in your voice. So when we're talking about mixed voice, we're talking about kind of the balance between chest voice and head voice. A lot of people like to think that you are 100% in your chest voice when you're singing chest voice, and you're 100% in your head voice when you're singing in head voice, and the mix is like a mix of the two. Oh, how I wish it were that simple. I mean, kind of. There's an element to that, but it's not quite that simple. We are doing our best as singers and as voice teachers to find language that speaks both to the scientific reality of singing and the sensational experience of singing, but sometimes what we feel or sense as singers and the scientific reality don't line up. So chest voice is named for that because singers tend to report that they feel like the sound is coming from their chest. And head voice is called that because singers tend to report that it feels like the sound is coming from their head. The scientific reality is that you have two really important muscles in your throat. One is called the thyroarytenoid muscle. We'll call it the TA for short. One is called the cricothyroid muscle. We'll call that the CT for short. And the thyroarytenoid muscle is partly responsible for shortening and thickening the vocal cords for lower and sometimes more powerful sounds, mostly lower. And the cricothyroid muscle, or the CT, is responsible for lengthening and tensing the vocal cords for higher pitches. So sometimes we like to think of TA dominant being chest voice and CT dominant being head voice. And again, it's really tempting to think that mix is just this perfect like mix of the two of them. The truth of the matter is you're always pretty much in a mix. I mean, there are exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, both of these muscles are engaging. It's the balance of engagement. It's the type of engagement. It's the relationship between the two of them that decides the tone that you're going to produce. But science aside, let's just sort of define chest voice as sort of a more speech or even yell-like quality in singing of like, ah, chest voice. Let's define head voice as a hootier, some people might even say more sung-like sound of like, ooh, 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 right? Or maybe a more classical sound of ooh. That's head voice, okay? Those are both a mix, actually. But you can hear the difference, right? Of ah, ooh, and then there's this big break that occurs between chest and head, okay? Okay, so when we're talking about mixed voice, we are talking about a closer knit relationship between the TA muscle and the CT muscle. We're also talking about airflow, but I'm not going to really get into that today. The distance is wider if you're in something that really feels like chest voice, and if you're in something that really feels like head voice, right? If we can think of this muscular engagement in terms of ratio, the CT engagement might be much higher in something that really feels like head voice than in something that feels more like a mix. Okay. Maybe you're like, I already knew all that because I have done another video on that. But what I want to talk about is the fact that I really like to think of mixed voice as having at least two variations. One that is the more contemporary style of mixed voice, and one that is the more classical, I'm just going to say like neutral style. And those styles come down to being a more chest voice dominant style of mixing and a more head voice dominant style of mixing. Okay. So if you're going to be singing, usually any kind of like pop, rock, more modern musical theater, belt, that's going to be your more chest voice dominant style of mixing. If you are going to be singing, I mean, classical for sure, even some like folk indie kind of stuff and classical musical theater, that's where you're going to want like a little bit more head mix. I am making very, very broad generalizations here. You can use a head mix in modern musical theater and in modern rock and all of that, and you can use a chest mix even sometimes in classical. Although you're not taking it up high in classical, but in all the other genres that I mentioned, definitely you can use the chest mix there. Okay, so don't like put yourself in a box with this, but generally speaking, those are the genres that you're going to be working in. And if you're working in more of like a classical musical theater, classical singing, or sort of like folk, like anything that's like a little bit lighter, you're going to be looking more for that head voice mix. And then bigger, beltier, yellier, more powerful sounds, pop, contemporary musical theater, you're going to be going more for that chest voice dominant style of mixing. Okay, so today I gave you sort of like the brief rundown of what's happening anatomically. Different in these two different types of mixing, right? Largely one's more CT dominant, one's more TA dominant, and I mentioned sort of briefly that the airflow is slightly different in the two of them. But I think what could potentially be more valuable to you all is not to speak so much to the science of it, but to speak to the experience of these two things so that you can practice them, so that you can feel them in your body and in your voice, and you can implement them. So when we use terms like chest voice and head voice, we're talking about where we feel resonance, right? If you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a lot of people feel resonance or sound vibration in their chest. If you go whoop, 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 a lot of people feel resonance or sound vibration in their head. So where we experience or even expect to experience resonance can change what we do physically and anatomically in our singing, okay? So, and how we move from one part of the body to another part of the body in terms of resonance also affects what we end up doing muscularly with our voices. So when we are singing in a chest voice mix, right? What gets challenging to get higher is it starts to feel like you're yelling and then you're straining, right? Or it's going to break and it's going to crack over into like head voice or falsetto or whatever, right? And that's what we're trying to avoid. So one thing to kind of like keep in mind when we're working for a chest voice mix is the resonance has to eventually move from your chest up more to like your face and your nose. So if you've been trying to do this for a while, you've probably seen and done tons of exercises that are like nay, 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 right? And you heard like I didn't quite make it to the pitch, and then I focused a little bit more on trying to put it in my face and put it in my nose, and then I made it all the way to the pitch, right? So maybe you've played with that. It's called Twang. If you're curious about Twang, see my video on Twang. I've made so many videos at this point. I'm like running out of stuff to talk about. But suffice it to say, as you get higher, you need to leave this space a little bit and come to this space without coming up to this space here. So one thing that I like to think about is how am I getting from here to here? The path is this way. And I think this makes more sense if you can kind of experience a little bit of head voice for a second. So if you make this sound and if you go, woo, 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 that feels very lofty. That feels like this kind of a shape to me. Woo, 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 right? And then if you make this sound go, nay, 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 it feels like whatever was lifted or lofted in the back, right? That sort of roundness is gone. Or like I sometimes describe it to my students like a latch that has lowered. Right? And we're trying to keep all of the sound forward of this spot, right? So as I'm going up, right, that's what's happening. I'm moving up, 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 and the sound might want to go this way. Right? That's the sound going this way. Instead, I'm going to think about it, and you can try, just like put your hand here, honestly. your hands doing things, or it's amazing the magic that will that will translate into your body by just putting your hand in certain gestures and in positions. So you can just put a little hand here and go up and imagine the sound moving this way, sort of from your chest up and forward, up and forward, up and forward. It's going to want to go this way. Don't let it. You want it to go this way, okay? So that's kind of the key to a chest mix up high is we want it to move up into this space, but how we get to that space matters. And it's a narrowing as we come up. It's not getting bigger, it's not getting wider. That's what's going to send you up into the space of your head. It's getting more narrow, and we're trying to stay in front of this latch here where my hand is, or really just in front of your ear, essentially, right? Now, if you want to do more of a head voice mix, right, then you want this loft. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I would say this position, that lift, that loft, that hootiness, whatever you want to call it, is the primary thing that people report experiencing in head voice. So what's challenging about head voice or a head mix is actually to bring it down low without losing core, right? We're up high, we feel great, and we're like, ooh. Similar problem to the chest mix, right? When I'm in a chest mix, I can't hold it in my chest the whole time. Eventually it has to move here. When I'm in a head mix, I can't hold it in my head the whole time. Some of that resonance does need to drop down to my face and maybe even my chest. I do need to let that move, but the difference is I'm going to maintain this quality even as I come down. So now I'm going to do that again, and this time I'm just going to imagine that instead of feeling all of the sound up here, like it does drop into my chest, but I'm not going to lose this. Ooh, right? But I'm not, ooh, ooh, ooh. You hear the difference, right? So I think that that is a really key element in learning how to mix. That resonance, like if you're just trying to belch and you're trying to like keep it in chest voice, it's not just going to stick in your chest the whole time. It is going to move, but this latch is going to stay closed. And if you want to be in a head voice mix, this latch needs to stay lifted and open, but the resonance is still going to move down here. It's not like you're never coming into your chest when you're in head voice, and it's not like you're never coming up into like your face or maybe even a little bit your head when you're in chest voice. The difference is this. This is the thing that really changes the tonal quality from something that sounds more like a chest voice dominant quality to a head voice dominant quality, okay? So, that had nothing to do with the TA, the CT, right? Like what? No, those muscles are here, but we're speaking to the experience. We're speaking to the sensation. We're speaking to something that maybe you actually truly have a little bit more control over, right? So give it a try. I'm telling you, do the hand gesture, especially if you're doing that chest voice mix. Hand here, really imagine your hand could block the sound from going back this way. And if you're doing that head voice mix, it even helps if you kind of like pull your hand up while you're doing it to kind of remind your body that you're trying to keep that sort of lifted, lofted quality as you come down into those lower pitches. So that is my advice for mixed voice singing and for understanding the difference between a more contemporary chest voice style of mixing and a more traditional head voice style of mixing. I don't know if I've heard it put that way by anybody else. I'd be curious. Let me know. And let me know how it works. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're confused. Let me know if your brain is like, oh, yes, that makes so much sense. Make sure to comment is the point. Happy singing.